Welcome to the League of Women Voters 2014 election coverage. I'm Diz Swift with the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville. This is one of a series of programs designed to showcase candidates for Berkeley City Council and for Berkeley School Board. And today we're meeting candidates from District 7. So welcome.
Thank you.
Let's introduce you. On the left, my left, is Sean Berry and Kriss Worthington.
Thank you.
We'll ask each of you the same question, and you'll have 1 minute to answer. I'll rotate between Sean and Kriss, and then Kriss and Sean, so you'll each have an opportunity to be both first and last. And if there is something that is a direct statement is made that is inappropriate, rebuttals may be appropriate. So, and that won't count toward the time. So let's start with the first question, Sean, and I warn you that you have 1 minute and it's a very broad question.
Okay.
So you need to think about the highest priority. The question is, what are the highest priority needs for the entire city of Berkeley?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you to the League for hosting. My three priority issues for the city are making sure that we're following through on our climate action plan that has a number of elements, whether it's meeting zero waste goals, building affordable housing near transit corridors, and otherwise continuing to be the leader that Berkeley has been on these issues. Second, public health partnerships. We're fortunate to have our own public health department in the city. We should continue to leverage partnerships so that we can serve the needs of our residents and help to fight health inequities. And third is really creating job opportunities for people at all ends of the income spectrum and from all educational backgrounds. I think we could do a better job of creating these living wage opportunities for people who might not have a college degree. So those are my three issues where I think Berkeley can continue to be a leader and really do concrete things here at home, to showcase our progressive potential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kriss.
My highest priority citywide is to bring a progressive and yet practical point of view to all the hundreds of issues that we deal with in the course of a year. The city of Berkeley has this great reputation as being progressive, but we don't always deliver on that in the real world. So I have sponsored the most council items, hundreds of them, on many different progressive issues. My second priority is not citywide, but more focused on my district, and affordable housing, public safety are critical issues in my district and citywide as well.
Thank you. You spoke a little about your district, but I'd like to pursue that a little bit more. What are the key needs in the district, your District 7, and how are they different from the rest of the city? Are there some specific things that we don't see elsewhere? Kriss.
Well, District 7 is 86% student age, and I have been the foremost advocate of empowering an entire generation of Cal students. I have appointed hundreds of students and helped get others to appoint them to city commissions. I've had hundreds of interns who worked in my office and actually wrote ordinances, resolutions, and city council items that got adopted by the city council. I think the disenfranchisement of students by city government for decades has been reversed. But we've made a lot of headway, but we're still trying to make more. That's why this year, instead of just me appointing 20 or 30 students, we set a goal of getting 51 students appointed to city commissions by all the council members so that we can try to reflect their percentage of the population.
Thank you. Sean.
Yes, District 7 is a unique district because it is 86% under the age of 30. And the issues really are very similar to citywide, but people are in a different stage of their life and might feel those issues differently. So in my mind, we really have three primary challenges. And the first is do students and residents feel safe at night in their neighborhoods and on our commercial corridors. The second is the affordability of housing. Rents have skyrocketed, mortgages are high, new home buyers face a perilous landscape. And that's really affecting everyone in the district, both students and non-students. And the third issue, really is making sure that we have a vibrant and inclusive telegraph corridor. We have a great history in Berkeley, in the campus community. I think we can do more to meet that potential to make sure that it's a welcoming space for people from all walks of life, whether they live here, visit here, show up here for a Saturday every once in a while. I think we can do better, and I think working together with the city, we can do that.
Thank you. Actually, following up a little on Telegraph. Telegraph is a key street for us. It's right next to the university. It's the bit from Dwight up is in your district, as you know. And we'd like that to be a showcase for the city. What can we do better? What are some of the key issues and what do we need to do about them? Sean.
Right. Well, and I think it's absolutely true that Telegraph is a gateway commercial corridor for the city, and it really is a part of our history and is an important part of our future. And in my mind, the solution to Telegraph really starts with people. It means more people living on Telegraph, working on Telegraph, dining and shopping on Telegraph, and investing in Telegraph, both their time and their money and their energy. And I think there are some practical steps that the city has started to take that I want to really accelerate, starting with allowing office space for startups on second floor commercial units. I voted for that on the Planning Commission. Building more housing units on the corridor on Bancroft and some of the surrounding streets so that we have eyes on the street. I'm a big believer in the Jane Jacobs philosophy of eyes on the street. So it really does start with people and their investment in the avenue, and that's what I would pursue. Great,
thank you. Kriss?
Well, we've made a lot of headway in terms of changing the laws and the policies. I sponsored proposals for 1 hour free parking, to create a parklet policy, to get the Berkeley Police Department and UC Police Department to have better coordination. I wrote the Violence Prevention Response Plan. I proposed that the city sue a vacant lot owner in order to get it to have a housing proposal. Shortly after we sued, they turned in a proposal. I fought to streamline the permit process successfully. And I sponsored the most important change that's happened in years for Telegraph, which is increasing the floor area ratio from 3.5 to 5. This will allow a 40% increase in the amount of affordable housing and student housing that can be built above Dwight Way close to campus.
Thank you. Berkeley has a unique culture and style across the city. And we have a robust artisan community. We have mom and pop stores. We have a very engaged population. Is it possible to retain that style and culture and still have the development we need, particularly for housing and for businesses? And I guess it's you, Kriss.
Well, I have been a passionate advocate for support for the arts, helping the Freight and Salvage and helping many other arts institutions get the funds in order to stay in Berkeley and survive and thrive. I've supported many proposals for small businesses and economic development proposals. I've written the largest number of economic development proposals for the City Council. And I've also proposed the Sunshine Ordinance and many other rules and policies and procedures and use of modern technology to allow the public to become more engaged and more inclusive. We do have an engaged citizenry, but it's somewhat elitist and self-selecting. We don't actually embrace and include all the people of all the different parts of our community. For far too long, South and West Berkeley have been left behind. Students have been left behind. Young people, high school students and other young people have been left behind. So we need to expand on our efforts in terms of arts and small business and community engagement.
Thank you. Sean.
Yes, and I absolutely believe that we need to nurture our arts community, our small businesses, but also do that while embracing new development and change. And I think it's both important and critical that we do those things as we build new housing and new opportunities, both for students and young professionals and people from all walks of life and all incomes who want to stay in the city, and hopefully they can. It really does create opportunity in terms of sales tax receipts in our commercial corridors, and it's very important that we nurture that customer base for these small businesses, some of which have only 2 or 3 employees and really do struggle. And I think we've also seen great progress in our downtown arts district. Susie Medic, the managing director for Berkeley Repertory Theater, is one of my supporters and somebody who has really been critical in that effort. And I really would want to continue to nurture that in downtown and hopefully bring more of that effort to the Telegraph area as well.
Thank you. On the topic of economic growth and development, we have on the ballot Measure R, which seeks to make changes to the downtown plan. How do you see Measure R and why, Sean?
Well, I am opposing Measure R, and I think that we have seen really good progress in downtown. We've seen new people, new restaurants, a lot of new potential. And I don't think that the current downtown plan is perfect. I mean, nothing is ever perfect in the policymaking realm, and it's also not set in stone, and the council has an opportunity to change it. My big problem with Measure R, one is that it changes the rules midway through the game. We had applicants for projects who thought that we had a certain set of rules in place, and now those are being changed. But more importantly, if we pass Measure R, we're not going to be able to modify it in the coming years. So to have this 20-plus page document that was written by 2 or 3 people without a public process like we had leading up to the current downtown plan, I really think would be a mistake for the downtown. And I think it's something that every candidate has to take a strong position on so that voters know what they think is happening in downtown and what we should do about it.
Thank you. Kriss?
Well, there's been a lot of hoopla and a lot of screaming and shouting and fighting over the previous version of the downtown plan and this new modification. And yet, I would say the practical real-world solutions that I have introduced actually have done more to change the real-world possibility for development. Even just the floor area ratio change for Telegraph and a 40% increase in how much housing could come into Telegraph in those opportunity sites, that could probably have just about as much of an impact nearly as the entire ballot measure that everybody's yelling at each other all over the city. The increase in development in Berkeley is attributed by some people to the previous Measure R. But these same kinds of massive increases in development are happening in many cities in the whole Bay Area who didn't have a Measure R or didn't have a downtown plan. So I think people spend too much time arguing about a plan and not enough time focusing on practical, real-world economic development solutions like the ones that I have sponsored.
Thank you. Talking about climate change, you raised it. When we first put out whether we wanted as a city to have a climate action plan, we passed it by over 80%. So we have a very supportive population here for climate action. We've got a climate action plan. It's gotten international and national recognition, but we want to know how effective is it? Are we really on track to where we need to be? And what, if anything, should we do differently? Kriss?
Well, I'm the only council member who has repeatedly advocated that we shouldn't just have a plan with hundreds of good ideas in it. We should actually implement many of them. What a concept. And in deciding which ones to implement, we should evaluate the cost effectiveness and the environmental effectiveness of each of these proposals. Not all 300 proposals are of equal environmental merit or equal economic feasibility. So we need to prioritize a few dozen things that are really critical that will have the greatest greenhouse gas reduction possibilities, and do some of the ones that could be done really inexpensively, but they may not have a dramatic impact, but they don't cost much. So I think we need to sort of pick off the big ones that need to happen, like community choice energy, which many other cities in Marin County and Richmond are doing it. Alameda County is moving towards it, and yet we still haven't gotten Berkeley to do this important environmental priority.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, and Measure G was really an important aspirational statement to make as a city, but the more important thing is, are we following through, and are we taking concrete steps to meet those goals? And I was interested to read the city auditor's report recently on our zero waste goals and the fact that we've made very significant headway in people recycling at home, getting rid of their food waste, but we have a minority that is not doing that, and there's a need for more education and investment. And doing that work and follow through isn't quite as flashy as passing a ballot measure, but it's very critical. And my background, when I went to work in DC after I graduated from college, I was at a transportation advocacy group. We really worked to find solutions nationally for building walkable, sustainable communities. We're doing some of that in Berkeley, but I think we can do more. That's partly a housing issue, partly a transportation issue. And we can also do a number of other things to really promote these policies, whether it's reducing the city fleet, promoting more biking and pedestrian projects, and also creating more green job opportunities in the city close to where people live. So I'd like to work on those issues on the council.
Thank you. on that topic, more specifically, how do we get people moving to reducing fossil fuels, and which is the biggest hitter that we need to do for mitigation? Cars are 50% of all emissions in California. How do we get people out of fossil fuel burning cars in Berkeley? And given that we have the challenge of the freeway going through, only look at the Berkeley residents at this point, and tell me what you have as ideas to make that work. Let's see, it's you, Sean.
Yeah, I think it's an important question because, again, it's easy to be aspirational, but it's harder to really make the lifestyle changes in our own lives. And I think all of us have changes that we know we could make that might be difficult. But when it comes to getting out of cars, I mean, the real crux of the issue is there a feasible, reliable alternative? And that really comes down to investments in transit. We can't do that alone. We have to work with the county. I am supporting the countywide measure on the November ballot that would do just that and fund many shovel-ready projects. So it's a regional effort. It's also a lobbying effort at the state level. And so we really have to make sure that people who want that alternative have it available. We also have geographical challenges in the city of people who live in the hills and elsewhere. So we have to have a creative mix of solutions.
Thank you. Kriss.
I was the vice chair of the committee countywide that helped create Measure BB, which is a very important ballot measure countywide. And I agree with Sean that we need to strenuously support Measure BB. Additionally, I have been a strong advocate for a downtown public transit center, which AC Transit begged the city of Berkeley to do, and the city of Berkeley has refused to do it. We need to make the kind of improvements to bus service that many other cities around us, like Oakland and San Francisco, are already doing. We have an antiquated bike plan that really needs to be refreshed. There are cutting-edge ideas that Emeryville, Richmond, Oakland are all doing, and we're not doing them yet. So we need to catch up with the Bay Area and update our plan, and we also need to update our pedestrian plan. Telegraph Avenue has some of the most heavily accident problem intersections in the city, and yet we're not having pedestrian lighting there for the safety of the people, daytime and nighttime, and we're not fixing the dangerous pedestrian intersections in Telegraph sufficiently.
Thank you.
And Bancroft.
And Bancroft, thank you. Skipping a little bit, your district includes the university, and as you've mentioned, you have a large proportion of university age people and university students. What do you see as the major town and gown issues facing our city, and how do you propose to deal with them? Kriss.
Well, I think the university is the single biggest entity and force in the entire city. And the city sort of ebbs and flows between, when they sued the university and wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of the taxpayers' money to sue them on a case that there was no chance of winning, and yet that was seen as politically very popular. And then they go to the other hand and they sort of let the university administration do whatever they want to do, whether it's good for the students, whether it's good for the neighborhoods, whether or not it's good for the businesses. And so we have this seesaw where, they're sort of fighting the university fiercely and spending the taxpayers' money profligately and stupidly, and then turning around and just saying, well, let the university administration do what they want. I have been a passionate advocate for the students, for the employees, for the neighborhoods, saying we need to negotiate with the university, we need to appreciate it, but we also need to stand up to the UC administrators who neglect all of these groups.
Thank you. Sean.
Well, the university is a critical part of our city, and it's impossible to imagine Berkeley without it. But it is a two-way street, and the city and the university both have to make sacrifices and compromises to make sure that the relationship is sustainable and constructive for all parties. And I think one example of this when it comes to student issues, some students live off campus, some live on campus, but most of them live in areas that, for instance, are patrolled by the Berkeley Police Department, the Greek system in particular. As we discussed earlier in the program, crime rates in the South Side are higher than the rest of the city, although crime is down citywide, which is a very good thing. But we also have a serious sexual assault issue on the university side, and that's something that requires strong partnerships, and that's something that I would want to be a part of on the council, and that really comes to bringing the police and the university and the city and merchants to the table. I think that's the kind of role that I could play, and hope I have a chance to do that.
Thank you. Okay, for the last question, let's go back to the ballot. Measure D is proposing to impose a general tax on distributors of sugar-sweetened beverages. Sean, what is your opinion on Measure D?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of Measure D, and I spoke earlier about my previous work experience in transportation and housing, and I really am convinced that health and transportation and housing and general quality of life and livability issues are all tied together. And we have a lot of health inequities in the city. I think we're fortunate that we have a citizenry that wants to do something about it. And this is an issue that's unified the community. We have a unanimous city council, unanimous school board, and I think we're going to be able to do what Richmond was not able to do, because we really put in the legwork to put together this broad coalition that represents people from different walks of life. And so I'm glad to be a part of that. I think if enacted, I would look forward to serving on the council and making sure that the revenue that's generated from this tax is put to purposes that really advance our recreational goals, open space opportunities. Obviously, we're supposed to keep our options open on that, but I think that it really is a great coalition, and I'm excited to be a part of it. I think that this is another potential first for Berkeley.
Thank you. Kriss?
Healthcare issues are one of my passionate, burning issues that I work a lot on. I've sponsored the City of Berkeley to support Yes on 45 and No on 46, the big ballot measures that are on health issues and insurance reform statewide. I sponsored numerous things for the City of Berkeley to support single payer, to do the health disparity study that showed the racial disparities in healthcare in the city. And so Measure D is just one more tool, along with all of these other important things like fighting for single payer, fighting for insurance reform with Prop 45, and dealing with opposing Prop 46. So I'm a longtime activist on these health issues. I've strongly advocated for nurses and patients, and for the people who are the victims of these issues like diabetes.
So, in your area, housing, of course, is an important issue. But what are the specific issues or problems with housing in your district? Low-income housing, mini dorms, studio apartments, family housing? What are the real questions in District 7? Kriss?
Well, there are numerous possibilities for fixing the housing crisis. The housing affordability crisis is one of the biggest issues in Berkeley. I have proposed dozens of solutions, some of which are working their way through the bureaucracy. One of the most important is to increase the supply of student housing close to campus, and to get the university to actually provide housing on university-owned land right adjacent to the university, so that students don't have to drive or come from a long distance. We also need to increase the funding for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I have proposed specific ways and specific pools of money that can be added, including a $500,000 amount from the Berkeley Inn project. If they don't build the affordable housing there, that they should add that money to the Housing Trust Fund. Rent control is one of the most important policies we need. I'm endorsed by the 8 pro-tenant members of the Rent Board, and I support opposing vacancy control and
Thank you. And, okay. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of housing challenges in District 7, and really the challenges come down to the quality, affordability, and availability of housing. And the solution is going to be a mix of everything. But one thing that really is critical is we do need to build new student housing opportunities near campus. And I was dismayed to read in the Daily Cal, and I was quoted in the story, about a project on Durant Avenue of 56 units that has gone through the city process, has encountered numerous delays. And it's important to have an engaged citizenry to review projects to make sure they're a good fit, but we also have to make sure we have fair rules of the road so that we can get these projects built, because there is definitely a housing scarcity. You see it when students show up a dozen or more of them, some with parents in tow looking at houses. I had that experience when I was a student just a couple of years ago. So it's really critical that we build new housing, whether it's from a private developer from the university, and also make sure that we make available resources on what's already there so that students and others can navigate the process.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to thank the candidates for spending this time with us and answering our difficult questions. We really appreciate your time. For more information on candidates, you may go to the smartvoter.org website or the League websites you'll see on the credits at the end of this. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to vote.